off we go. So understanding call changes. So in just get my other thing up. So in this presentation, we're going to look at all the things you need to know about how to understand, ring and call changes. We're going to look at a bit of ringing jargon, look at exactly what a call change is, different ways that they're called, different speeds of ringing that you need to be aware of, preparing to make a change, and how to keep track of where you are, having a go at calling some call changes, and I'm going to recommend some resources. So, right, okay, I'm going to go back because I've got out of time already. So in this section, we're going to look at how to ring, we're going to check our understanding. Let's go back. It's all gone horribly wrong. We're going to check our understanding, make sure we know the terms that are essential to be able to ring and call changes well. So to understand how to ring call changes, we need to be fluent in Belvish. We need to understand the instructions we're given in order to make the right decisions and take appropriate action to achieve the right result. Belvish can be a fiendish language. Quite often you think that somebody's speaking English, but then you realise you haven't understood a word that they've said. Bells sound from the highest note, number 1, to the lowest note, number 6, in rounds. The bell at the front leads. The bell at the back is sometimes, so this isn't working. The bell at the back is sometimes referred to as lying behind or covering. So bells move up or out to the back, or down or into the front. A whole pull comprises a hand stroke and a back stroke. Each of the bells strikes once in a row. The difference between one row and the next row is called a change. So bells can ring one place sooner, one place later than in the row before, or stay in the same place. In this change, 2 and 3 have swapped places with each other. Place is the position that each bell strikes in the row. And in this row, 2 is striking in 5th place. It's the 5th note to strike. So in this section, about what is a call change, I'm going to explain what a call change is, the different ways in which they can be called, the different speeds of ringing that you need to be able to master in order to ring them. A call change, or a called change, is when the conductor instructs 2 bells to swap places. In this example, 2 and 3 are the bells that swap places. 2 moves up one place and 3 moves down one place. And there are different ways of calling call changes. Calling bells up, calling them down, and calling by place in the row. Now the first 2 methods, the calling up and calling down, are by far the most common methods used, and calling up is probably the most popular of those 2. So up and down calls are called in the same way. So 2 to 3 moves 2 up one place towards the back of the row, and 3 to 1 moves 3 down one place towards the front of the row. Calling by place in the row is slightly different. So if 2nd and 3rd place is called, that instructs the bells ringing in 2nd and 3rd place to swap places. So all of these calls, although there are different calls made, all of these calls are actually resulting in the same row and same change afterwards. So calls are made a whole pull before the change takes effect. And this gives you time to prepare so that the bells can move cleanly into their new positions. If that call is made at hand stroke, then the change takes effect the following hand stroke. And if the call is made at backstroke, the change takes effect the following backstroke. When call changes are called up, the number of the bell that is to move and move up the row is always the first number in the call. It moves one place towards the back of the row. For example, 2 to 3, when called, when the bells are ringing and rouse, will swap bells 2 and 3 over. So think of that little word to as meaning to after or follow 3. 2 to 3. 2 moves one place towards the back of the row to ring after 3. So 2 after 3. The call is made at hand stroke and the bell should not move until the next hand stroke. So 2 to 3 called at the hand stroke here. And the change happens here at the next hand stroke. And when the call changes are called down, the number of the bell that's to move down the row is always the first number in the call, and it moves one place towards the front of the row. It moves down the row. For example, 3 to 1, called when the bells are ringing rounds, will swap bells 2 and 3, or 3 and 2. So again, think of that little number, little word 2 as meaning 3 after or follow 1. 3 to 1. 3 moves down one place towards the front to allow 3 to ring after 1. And the call's made at hand stroke again. So if it's made at hand stroke, the call's made here, 3 to 1. And the change happens here at the next hand stroke. And there are 3 different speeds that we need to be aware of. Ringing quicker to move down the row towards the front, ringing slower to move up the row towards the back. And those speeds only apply to the row when the change happens. And only if you're one of the bells that's affected by the change, or rather one of the bells that's changing position. All of the other bells ring at the same speed that you started off, which is round speed. So now I'm going to explain what you have to do to make clean, well-struck changes. If the call's been made at hand stroke, use the next backstroke to prepare for the move. To move up the row or towards the back of the row, you need to ring slower, put a little more energy into the next backstroke to make the bell swing higher and strike later and allow the sally to rise. To move down the row or nearer to the front, you need to ring quicker, put less energy into the backstroke, slow the sally so the bell doesn't swing as high and strike sooner. Pull that next hand stroke firmly so the next backstroke doesn't drop. And these are bell handling skills which require practice in the tower to perfect, but understanding the theory behind them will make it easier to put it into practice. So to move up, you need to hold your bell up at hand stroke to ring one place later. Put more energy into the backstroke immediately after the conductor has called the change to make the bell swing higher and strike later. Allow the sally to rise and ring after the bell that was following you. This is the change after rounds from 2's point of view, and 2 has moved up to ring after 3. To move down, pull your hand stroke sooner to ring one place earlier. Put less energy into the backstroke, slow the sally so the bell does not swing as high and strike sooner to ring before the bell that you were following. Pull the hand stroke firmly so the next backstroke doesn't drop. And this change is the change after rounds, but from 3's point of view, and 3 has moved down one place towards the front. So I'm going to show you now what information you need to keep yourself right and make the right decisions about what you're going to do. So to keep writing call changes, you need to be able to prepare to move. It's important to know who you are following, and to really keep on top of things, you need to know the whereabouts of some of the other bells too. In this row, 2 is ringing in 4th place. 2 is following 3, so far so good. However, it's important to know which bell the bell you are following is following 2. And 3 is following 4. And just for good measure, knowing which bell is following you is really useful. So if you're number 2, that bell is number 1. So why do I need to know all of this? Well, when the conductor calls a call change that affects you, then knowing which bells are in front and behind you will help you make the right decision about what to do. If you're ringing the 2 in this row, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 6, if the conductor calls 3 to 2, knowing that 3 is following 4, helps you to make the move down the change, because you know who to follow when 3 moves out of the way to ring after you. Once you've moved to your new position in the row, you need to make a note of who you are following, who that bell is following, and which bell is now following you. So 2 is now following 4. 4 is following 5, and 3 is now the bell that's following 2. One more thing to note, 1 is now following 3. However, 1 has not moved from 5th place in the row. Be alert that changes can still affect you even if your bell is not mentioned. The bells in front of you may change places, and you will therefore follow a different bell, but you'll still be ringing at round speed. If you know which bell the bell you are following is following, if they change places, it won't take you by surprise. Whichever bell you're ringing, after every change has taken place, ask yourself, which bell am I following? Which bell is that bell following? And which bell is following me? Knowing which position your bell strikes in the row is another important skill to acquire. If you've ever wondered how the conductor knows what's going on, a good conductor will be aware of which bell is ringing in each place in every row. Some rows are easy, rounds for instance, all of the bells are in their home position. You can use other named changes to practice working out each bell's position. So queens, for example, 1's leading, 3's in 2nd place, 5 is in 3rd place, 2 is in 4th place, 4 is in 5th place, and 6 is in 6th place. Backgrounds. Here we have 5 leading, 4 in 2nd place, 3 in 3rd place, 2 in 4th place, 1 in 5th place, and 6 in 6th place. So you can practice this by doing the same exercise for other changes like Whittingtons and Tittums. This is something that you can go away and do yourself. So knowing how to call changes can help to improve your understanding of them. And so, in the following slides, I'm going to only use the calling up convention rather than all of the different other ones as well. So let's try a little exercise. Call the 5th from its home position, which is 5th place, down to lead. 4 to 5. And so you can see 5 is now in 4th place. 3 to 5, and 5 now moves into 3rd place. 2 to 5, 5 moves into 2nd place. 1 to 5, and 5 is now leading. So if you do this with each bell in turn, starting with the bell in 5th place, then the bells will end up in rounds. So the next time you're going to start with bell number 4, who is now in 5th place. So this time, let's call number 1 up to 5th place. 1 to 2. 1 moves up from leading into 2nd place. 1 to 3. 1 moves up into 3rd place. 1 to 4, 1 moves up into 4th place, and 1 to 5, 1 moves into 5th place. So that took 4 calls, and the last exercise took just 4 calls as well. So you can do the same here with each bell in turn, starting with the bell that's leading, which was 2 in that case. So now let's try another exercise. So this is Queens, and starting from here, I'm going to guide you through the calls to get back to rounds. So you can think of this a little bit like solving a Rubik's Cube. So in Queens, bells 1 and 6 are already in the right place, so you haven't got to move them at all. 5 is in 3rd place, and our first target is to get 5 into its home position, which is 5th place. So move the 5 into 4th place, so 5 to 2, and there is moved into 4th place. And now move the 5 into 5th place, 5 to 4. So 4, 5 and 6 are now in the right place, and so you can leave them alone. You haven't got to worry about them at all. And our next target is going to be to move 3 into 3rd place. So 3 is currently in 2nd place. So we're going to call 3 to 2, which moves 3 into 3rd place, and now we're back into rounds. So you could try this with some other changes that you know. Try getting them from rounds into each of those changes, and concentrate on 1 bell at a time to do it. That's how I call chord changes. I concentrate on 1 bell, get it to the place I want it to. So to practice chord changes when you're not in the tower, I've got a couple of ideas for some resources, and after the presentation we can talk about some more resources as well. So you can make yourself some number cards like these. So you just print them onto some paper, so you could use playing cards as well, and you set 1 set to your target change, and then you use the other set from rounds. You call changes in turn, and change the bells over until you get to your target change. It's a good idea to write those changes down so you can check back whether you've called them the right way, and always try and stick to whichever calling convention that you started out with. So ringing with a simulator is a good idea. So if you've got a simulator installed on your PC or your phone, you can practice ringing chord changes by pressing the J key or pressing the screen. And if I go back to that slide, there are other simulators other than Able. The one I've shown on here is the Mac version of the Able, because I have a Mac. And there's a couple of other versions, Bell Tower and Belfryware. I've not used either of those, so I can't make recommendations. So the things that I want you to take away from this presentation is that what you need to know is where you are in the row, which bell you're following, which bell that bell is following, and which bell is following you. And when you're sort of like good at that and you're comfortable with that, the other things that you can be looking out for is knowing which bell is leading and working out the order of the bells. So we've got to the end of my presentation. I'm going to come out of that because that was extremely scary with the animation. So when I put a voiceover on it for the film, it all worked really quite well, but it seems to have gone quite quickly. So I don't know whether other people are feeling that that was a bit rushed. I got the feeling that it was a bit rushed. But so if anybody has any questions and some that you'd or would like to go back to anything and talk about anything, then let's open up the microphones now and let people ask.
Yeah, people should be able to unmute themselves. I haven't seen anything in the chat box. Please either mute yourself.
I probably didn't give people time to even think about it. Those resources with the little cards that I have got a little video of Mac's Earth. So here she is.
Hello, I will use the cards to call Titten. The blue cards are in Titten. I will use the pink cards to call from round to match the blue cards 2 times. The first call is 3 to 4. 3 to 4. Then you call 2 to 4. 2 to 4. Then you go 3 to 5. 3 to 5. Now you are in tisms. To call it back, you have to do it the opposite way. So you have to go 5 to 3. 5 to 3. Then you have to go 2, 4, 2, 2. 4, 2, 2. Now the last call is 4, 2, 3. 4, 2, 3. There. Done. This is how you call 2 systems.
So there you go. So that illustrates it very well of what I meant. So I asked Max to do that for me, and Max, who has only been, well, she's 7, nearly 8. She's been ringing for a couple of years, but for a long time she wasn't able to really do anything except ring on her own or ring just about in rounds, and hadn't got enough bell control to be able to ring call changes. But she had a really good understanding of call changes. So what we used to do with Max was we used to ask her to call the changes when, and she wasn't actually ringing. So she'd call them from outside the circle. And we went on a ringing outing on New Year's Day, and she asked if she could call some call changes, and we hadn't planned this either, and we also didn't give her any guidance what to call. And so we said, yes, okay, go ahead. And she perfectly called that sequence of call changes that I demonstrated in the PowerPoint, of calling the bells from the back, from 5th place to lead. Called all of them, so from 5 down to the lead, 4 down to lead, 3 down to lead, 2 down to lead, 1 down to lead, and we were back in rounds. And she just did that without having any sort of, we didn't discuss it first, and she called them perfectly. So she has a really good understanding of call changes, and having an understanding of how to call them is one of the ways that to get really good at call changes. I mean, a lot of people, sort of experienced method ringers can be, you sometimes say, oh, I hate call changes, and they can be notorious for not concentrating sort of what's happening around them, and you call a call change and they don't move, and you sort of say, 4 to 5, 4 to 5, 4 to 5. And then you suddenly realise that somebody who, either the 4 or the 5th, one of those two, hasn't remembered that they're actually ringing the 4 or the 5, and that's all it is. But and I don't know whether sometimes method ringers feel that they can, because call changes are in inverted commas easy, because they haven't got don't require the same sort of method learning as methods. They sort of switch off and don't concentrate. But call changes it's just as important to concentrate as hard in call changes as it is in ringing methods. So does anybody have are there any aspects of the presentation that I covered that I covered too quickly,